Well, welcome everybody to FedChat. I'm so proud to be here. This is our first inaugural episode of FedChat, which is part of FedChoice Federal Credit Union's Mosaic series. And Mosaic stands for making our stories accessible, inclusive, and connected. And a very special welcome to our very first guest of FedChat, Ms. Brenda Jackson. Welcome, Brenda.
Thank you.
Brenda, we're also doing this, our first episode in celebration of Black History Month. And we're just very proud to do this. And the reason that we're doing this is, we as a organization and a credit union want to make sure that we continue the dialogue about diversity, equity, and inclusion. We don't think it's enough to keep seeing one injustice happen and then get outraged and then the conversation dies. We want to keep the conversation going and make people just aware of challenges that are faced by underrepresented people, and just to create some conversation over how we can change things for the better to create equity in our world. Mm-hmm. So Brenda, thanks for being here, and we'd love to get some background on you. So I guess I'd like to start out by just asking you, would you share what you do for FedChoice and how you maybe became a member of the credit union?
Okay, I will. Thank you very much, Brent. All right, first of all, thank you, Brent, and your staff for allowing me to share my story today. I joined my very first credit union in 1971 when I was a freshman in college in Atlanta, Georgia. And from there, I started my career. And the way I got up to FedChoice is I was sent up to Washington, D.C. in 1979 for additional computer programming training. And while I was in D.C., I decided to go ahead and join what was called then Internal Revenue Federal Credit Union back in 1979. So as time progressed, as you may already know, in 2005, Internal Revenue became FedChoice because we wanted to change the field of membership. Not just IRS employees could join, but our CEO at the time brought it to the board and said, we need to open up the field of membership to all the federal employees at every agency, and that helped us to increase our membership. So that's how I joined in 1979 when I was in DC for additional computer programming training.
All right, well, thanks for that little pitch for FedChoice. I love it. Did you grow up in Atlanta as well?
Yes, Atlanta's my home. I was born and raised in Atlanta. My mother and father were born in the state of Georgia. I have two sisters and one brother. And we lived in the community. It was for low income at the time when we were growing up. And in those communities that were referred to as projects. And so we experienced a lot of discrimination, a lot of hardship because the blacks and the whites could not live in the same community.
Okay. Well, as long as we're on the topic, would you be willing to share some of your experiences about growing up in such a racially divided area?
Yes. The main thing that I remember as a little girl was going shopping sometimes. And when we would go into different places, we were not allowed to use the public restrooms. We had separate water fountains. There were water fountains that were marked colored and water fountains that were marked for the whites. Now, growing up as a young child in a segregated city, I was known and called different names, the N-word, Negro, colored, African-American, Black. So we were like getting kind of confused because every time we turned around, we had a different type of name for our race. But we grew up in a very loving and beautiful place together with my family. And my mother and father did not get an opportunity to go to college. But the main three things they instilled within us were, number one, they want us to attend church. Number two, they want us to continue to pursue our education. They want us to go further than they did. They only went to high school education. And number three, they always said, take care of each other. My two sisters and I, since I relocated to Georgia, we're very close. My brother and his family lives in California.
Thanks for sharing that. You mentioned family, you mentioned tight community, church, and education.
Yes.
With all the things that you face and the adversity, how else do you persevere to overcome that, to become a successful person like you are?
Okay. Well, what I had to do was the through education, mentors, and people like my mother and father were always so positive. You have to tell yourself, you can't let other people define you. You have to tell yourself, well, I need to persevere, be strong, set goals and dreams for myself. So my upbringing was that way. They didn't teach us to hate anyone, but they also wanted us to make sure we would be successful in life. Because even growing up in Atlanta during the time when I grew up doing Jim Crow and other kind of laws and different things that we had to endure, we could not even vote. So my mother and father instilled within myself and my two brothers, when you become of age, I want you to vote. Now, we have been watching people on television with the water hose, the dogs sicked on people, because they just wanted to be able to be a regular American citizen to exercise their right to vote. But then they weren't allowed to. So for me to endure all the hardship, I just had to keep myself surrounded with mentors, positive people, keeping my dreams and aspirations in front of me and my goals. And I had some very good teachers growing up too in my community, although the schools were segregated. And what we really didn't like was whenever the white school districts received new books, we were given the raggedy books, torn up books, pages ripped out. The kids had written their names in them, and they all had the white school districts. Some of them would write incorrect answers in the books on purpose. So we would try to copy the answers, but we knew our teacher would always say, read the information for yourself. Don't look at the answers in the book. Just go ahead and learn the information anyway. I didn't see a brand new book, Brent, until I was about in the 10th grade. So all the way through elementary and part of my high school. There was no junior high school back in the days, but all we had to endure was just hand-me-down materials all the time.
Right,
and that was really, really hard. But I just kept myself focused, and the teachers encouraged us to do our best, that we could excel and be somebody.
Yeah. Well, I think we've come a long way since then, but we sure have a long way to go too. And we see a lot of problems that exist, especially in inner city schools right now.
Yes.
And the fact that structural racism has an impact that's very similar to some of the things that you've experienced growing up, and it's going on today.
Yes.
But I think we both value diversity, but I just want to ask you, how important is diversity to you, and what value do you think it brings?
Okay, thank you. It's very important to me. When I started my career in 1971, and I was working in the computer branch, it was predominantly males, all white males, a handful of females, and very few African Americans. And I knew when I graduated from high school that I was going to go to college. But in my senior year in high school, the business education teacher told all of the seniors, I hate to see you all graduate because we're getting these large new machines that are called computers. And I think these computers will be a part of the future. So you should go to school, learn data processing, because then you will have a very good job. And so as I look back over my life, I think about diversity needs to include everyone. Everyone needs to be given a level of playing field so we all could be included. Everybody can be treated equally and fair and not discriminated because of a person's race or gender or anything else, or sexuality too, because we're living in the 21st century now and things are quite different. And back in my earlier years when growing up doing segregation, we knew about the civil rights movement because that was really big in Atlanta, Georgia. And in my community where I lived, Dr. Martin Luther King, when my father knew he wanted to move his family from one community to a better community, we lived right around the corner from Dr. Martin Luther King.
Okay.
Yes, I was walking from home many days with my friends from school, and we would see Dr. King. He would always wave at us. And at first, I did not realize what a giant of a man he was. Well, we have been watching television, listening to civil rights movements and all of the freedom riders, and just taking all that in. I look back now, And that was a momentous occasion for me to meet him as a little kid. And I think I might have been in the 6th or 7th grade. And to think, well, here's a guy who's fighting for my rights so that I can have a better life. And I thought it was really amazing, too.
That's about as big of a brush with greatness as you can get right there.
Yes.
That's pretty amazing.
Oh, yes.
So you mentioned you were the first or one of the first African-American computer programmers at the IRS in Atlanta. So
Yes.
That's an amazing accomplishment on its own. In that environment, what challenges did you face?
Many, Brent,
Yeah.
believe me, many challenges. I worked myself up through the career ladder from 1971, still going to school, still taking computer classes, although they were called data processing back in the day. Back in the day, for the young people that may be listening to this recording, we had to write our computer programs on key punch cards using key punch machines. You'll probably have to Google that to see what it looks like. And so it was very difficult in trying to program. But also before I became a programmer, I worked my way up through the ranks and I became a computer operator, learned all the operations. Then I became a tape librarian, and then I became a supervisor over the tape librarians. And when an opening was announced that there was going to be a resident computer programming analyst position, I had already told all my friends, when I'm going to school, I want to excel. That's the field that I really want to be, a computer programmer. And there was only one white lady and at least 10 white men, all white guys. All my friends would say, oh, no, but that's a job for a white person. You don't have the right color. I said, but I got the education. I've got the experience because I worked in the computer branch and I worked at various positions. And so when it was announced that I received the job, the guys didn't really want to help me, but my supervisor mentioned to me, Brenda, they won't spoon feed you. But what I need you to do, and I know you're smart, you just get in there, you dig deep, you learn as much as you can on your own. If they give you too much of a hard time, you can come to me, because they mistreated the other white lady as well, because they only wanted those jobs to be male, dominated by males only. And so going through that hardship, I look back now, and I know in a way they kind of made me a better person, because it made me persevere, made me be brave, stronger, because I knew I was reaching the goal and dream that I had set for myself. And so I was announced to be the first African-American resident computer programmer in 1979. And I had been working for IRS for 8 years. And so I was very proud of that accomplishment. But I do also want to say that my family and a lot of other mentors really encouraged me to just stick it out. Because sometimes when you are the very first in any position, you have to endure a few trials and tribulations because you are the first.
Yeah.
So people try to break you down. They don't want you to succeed. But if you know you have a strong mentality, mind made up, where I have a goal, this is my dream, this is where my aspiration, this is where I want to go and where I want to be. And I knew as the first African-American programmer, I wanted to set like a bar for the next person, so it would open the door for maybe another minority to fill my shoes.
Excellent. So that's not the only place that you were first. You were also the first African-American woman on the board of directors of FedChoice Federal Credit Union.
Yes.
So,
okay.
So what challenges might have existed in that role?
Okay. In that role, it wasn't too difficult. And I'll say that only because I started volunteering when we were Internal Revenue Federal Credit Union back in 1988. I was approached by one African-American male who was also a volunteer. And he just came to me and another young lady, and he said, well, do you all want to be volunteers with the credit union and serve on various committees? And I said, yes, because I like numbers, and that is what I really wanted to do. So I volunteered, and it took me 13 years to become a board member in 2001.
Okay.
Because the board was predominantly, it had one African-American male, and the rest were white males, but there was not a vacancy on the board until someone passed away.
Okay.
And when this gentleman passed away, it was announced that there was going to be an opening on the board. I had already served on the supervisory committee, appeals committee, member loans committees, all these various committees. So I knew a lot because I was learning as I went through my volunteerism with the credit union. So when I became the first African American female, there was only one other white female, one black male. Everyone was pretty nice to me, but I knew inside I would still have to learn it on my own. What were the roles, responsibilities of a board member? But they gave me handbooks, and they also offered me educational conferences to attend so that could also increase my knowledge.
Excellent.
Mm-hmm.
So who are your role models or heroes?
Okay, thank you. My very first role models, I guess you're going to know I'm going to say my mother and father. Yeah. Let me tell you this short story about my dad.
Sure.
My dad was a military guy. Most military men are strict, disciplined. So when my father would come home from work, before we could even eat dinner, Brent, the four of us, he would make us line up, starting with me, your birth order. I was first, my other sister, my brother was the third child, and then my youngest sister. And we would line up every day in the living room. And my father would drill us. We had to say all our alphabets from A to Z. And we were in elementary school at this time, and we knew them. But then the hard part with Brent was when he said, I want everybody to learn the multiplication tables. Each of us, starting with me as the oldest, had to recite every day 1 times 1 equals 1, all the way through 12 times 12 equals 144. So my two sisters, my brother and I, we had to learn all these multiplication tables. But you know, when we went to school, in elementary school, and the math teachers would give us tests, when they found out that the Harvey kids knew their multiplication tables, they would turn to the other kids in the classrooms and say, well, why aren't you all like the Harvey kids? They know all the multiplications. So all the kids at school were mad at us, Brent, because we knew our multiplication, because my father drilled us every single day. And because of that, I want to thank him. I know he's looking down and watching over us for doing that, because all four of my three siblings and myself, we fell in love with numbers. We all pursued a career in information technology. Everyone in my family followed my footsteps. And that is how I ended up becoming a part of the computer processing industry. And my career just took off. And I guess all the rest is history, because I really fell in love with volunteering with the credit union, because it's all about finances. And that's exactly what I wanted to know. And growing up in the projects, we were the first kids to receive an allowance. We received $3 every week, but you had to make sure you knew all your alphabets, you did all your homework, and you did all your multiplication tables.
Next question, 12 times 11. I'm just kidding. Okay. We got it. But so I think you yourself are a role model and a hero, and a lot of people look up to you. How do you feel being recognized in that way for what you've accomplished and the example that you continue to set for people?
I'm honored to be recognized as a role model or hero myself, because it almost me, because I didn't set out to do that. It just happened. But I always would like to set an example to inspire other people, young and older, to always pursue their dreams. But always also set a goal. When you reach one goal, continue to climb up and keep going. And also when you're climbing up a ladder, especially with the career ladder, you should always think about pulling someone else up behind with you, that everybody can reach back and pull someone else who wants to grow, as we continue to grow through even the credit union industry as well.
Yeah, I think at this credit union, I think the fact that we have you on our board and we have diversity on our board gives hope to other people that they can get to those positions in life as well and follow your lead. So I just want to thank you for setting that example.
Thank you.
And then just ask you too, how do you make sure everyone feels included and a sense of belonging, in the things that you do in life today?
Okay. The first thing that I did when Mr. Abrams passed away, he was the very first African American on the board, and I became the second African American, but first female. I was instrumental in trying to find other African Americans and other minorities, not necessarily Black. It could have been Asian, Pacific, but Hispanic. I was asking different people at work if they were interested in serving as a volunteer with the credit union. So I was able to find another board member another person who served with me on the supervisory committee, because the supervisory committee was the committee that is normally the board of directors pulled from this particular committee, because the supervisory committee is in charge of making sure that the auditing is done completely for the credit union, making sure that the credit union is financially sound, meeting the members' needs and things like that. And also the supervisory committee is considered to be the watchdog for the credit union, because if there are any problems any member is facing, they can always reach the supervisory committee so that we can take a look into that particular issue or complaint. So I was able to think about, well, let me help someone else move up, because someone had also encouraged me to volunteer with the credit union as well. And even today on the supervisory committee that we currently have, this is the first time that we've ever had an Asian Pacific person and 2 additional African Americans besides myself on the committee. And I do have one Caucasian, and he's been on the committee. He never wants to be on the board, so we just keep him on the supervisory committee because he's a retired attorney. But he's always enjoys the meetings like everybody else on the supervisory committee. And so what I do to make everyone feel that they belong and inclusive, my very first supervisory job, I was responsible for teaching the employees that were called tape librarians, how to put everything together for the jobs of the computer operators, where to take inventory. We had a lot of work to do. So I was given 2 deaf employees at the time. And I said to myself immediately, I need to hurry up and take American Sign Language so I can be able to communicate effectively with the 2 employees that were assigned to my work location, my workplace. So that is exactly what I did, because I wanted those 2 individuals to feel like they were a part of not only the organization, the workplace, but someone would take time to learn American Sign Language in order to be able to communicate with them. So I'm even able to say to you, my name is Brenda, B-R-E-N-D-A. And I use that to increase awareness also, because back in the day when I was growing up, and I do believe what helped me to reach the goal of being the first African American was affirmative action. Because for so many years, we were not given the opportunity to advance. There was housing discrimination, employment discrimination, but when affirmative action was, policies were put into place, it created a workplace to increase underrepresentation of individuals who were held back based on their race, gender, sexuality, and nationality, and also their creed. So affirmative action did help me. And the way I learned about affirmative action after I received my position in 1979 is to think of as affirmation action as affirmative action is swinging the pendulum from one side to at least the middle, where it's not always in favor of one set of races or genders, but you want to make sure you can have an inclusive, like we're looking at DEI now, diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is still under the umbrella of affirmative action. I know that we've heard a lot of things on the news about it that's being attacked, but it is positive as well as DEI, because sometimes I think people forget that certain races were given a special privilege. And that's just the way that the world was. And that's just how we became accustomed to it. But we knew we still had aspirations, and we wanted The same thing everyone else wanted. Every race, I believe, wants the same thing. You want excellent housing. You want the best education for your kids. You want healthy food. You want excellent health care, retirement, just things that anyone else would naturally want to have. But
Yeah.
a lot of times people are held back because we have these unconscious bias. And we all have one or two, whether we want to admit it or not. We have some, for example, we have some people who are unconsciously biased against a short person, or people who only prefer a tall person. But those kind of things we have to address, because in the 21st century, we just have so much going on. And with diversity, to me, it opens up a pool of various talents, gifts, and ideas, because we all come from different backgrounds and different cultures as well, too.
Thank
And
you.
also what helped me in my career, too, was I joined various IRS employee organizations, and some were federal. And one that I would like to talk about, well, I'll talk about several of them, was BIG, Blacks in Government. I joined that organization. Federally Employed Women, I joined that one too, in order to help me to excel, to do a good job. And also I joined one that you remember of, African American Credit Union Coalition.
Yes, ma'am.
But
Yeah.
I just renewed my membership April of 2021, because I wasn't very active at first, because I had a lot of caregiving to do for some of my family members at the time.
Yeah.
And at the IRS, what I really loved about working at IRS in Washington, D.C., is that we would have not only Black History Month, we would also celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month, Asian Pacific. We would do Disability Awareness Month. And we did various things like that in the agency to make us all become aware of all the diversity that's right there at work that we overlook. Sometimes you may sit next to someone at work. You don't know what their family life was like, what their culture, what their food was like. So the best part of those celebrations we really enjoyed was when we got an opportunity to see the fashions during these particular months, learn about various culture lights, and especially the food, Brent. We would have food tasting at the IRS over in New Carrollton, and we couldn't wait whenever it was Hispanic, Asian Pacific. It was delicious. We couldn't wait to run downstairs to the lobby to learn about the various cultures and also taste all of the delicious food as well.
Yeah, I hope we can get through this pandemic thing and start doing more of that at FedChoice in the near future too, because that is wonderful. It's a great experience.
It really is. It really is. Yes.
But your story is very inspiring, and everything that you've overcome and where you are today. What additional advice might you have for people who are facing unconscious bias, as you said, or other challenges?
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you for that question. I would say that in the society in which we live, that we need to hold people accountable for their behaviors, because it has a potential to cause certain consequences in various people's lives. I would tell people that they should be able to feel comfortable in expressing their views, being able to share information without feeling someone's going to take your information, because I've had that happen to me at work. I would share my ideas or how I'm going to resolve a problem, and by the time I would get to the meeting, another coworker would steal my idea, Brent, and present it to the whole group as his idea, when actually it was my idea. And I think that we have to let people be able to express themselves and not feel like someone's going to steal your idea. And people should feel comfortable in promoting dialogue within the workplace and also within our communities as well. I believe everyone should be given a chance to shine, because everyone, to me, is a superstar. Everyone brings something to the table. You don't want to be sitting in the back when you know you've got something to share and something that needs to be said. And it could take an organization or a business to another level. But if a person feels shy, well, they're not going to listen to me, I'm not going to be seen, I'm not going to be heard, then a company and the organization will not get all the benefits from that particular person's skills, knowledge, experience, and their abilities to excel. And a lot of people, and then when I think about diversity, also we have to think about the way people's mindsets are, because everybody thinks differently, because everybody was created differently, and we all were raised in different backgrounds, as we were growing up.
Well, thank you so much for that advice.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to thank you for being the first guest on this program. We couldn't have had a better guest for this show and a better first guest. So thank you again so much for your time. We appreciate, on behalf of the whole team at FedChoice who put this together, and thanks to them, by the way, for doing this as well.
Yes.
We just want to express our appreciation and gratitude to you for being part of this. Thank you.
You're welcome.